J. Charles and Dr. Howe. Relate to this.
Listen, man. Listen. Well, first off, good evening. Let's just get that. We're gonna cut right to the chase. Good evening to everyone. We welcome you to this episode of Relate to This. I'm Jay Tross. That's Dr. Siegfried Howe. Hey, Dr. Howe, how are you on this evening?
Hey, I'm doing well, man. We were talking before the show, so I'm just want to make sure that you listen to me and not bring up that topic that we talked about.
But you know what? I'm not gonna bring it up. But
Okay.
I will say this, and I'm gonna say it more in a loving way, right?
Okay, yeah.
Nah, it ain't no loving way. Listen,
What?
no. Let's just hear me out, because I'm not gonna bring it up, right? I'm not gonna bring up that, but I'm gonna bring
Okay.
what I am going to say is the older, and you'll understand what I'm saying when I get through with this.
Okay.
The older generations,
Mm-hmm.
females and males alike, right? And what I mean by older is I mean those who are older than you and I, right?
Mhm,
So
mhm,
they can be 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, you
mhm,
know, whatever it may be. And this is so everybody understand, we're talking about relationships and we're talking about people in general, right? The older generations, Dr. Howe, and I'm not gonna put my disclaimer in yet. I'll put it in after this. But that older generation, they slick with theirs. They're
Yeah.
slick. They're
Yeah.
slick with theirs. They're real smooth. I ain't gonna say slick. They're real smooth with it. Okay, and you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
They're real smooth in their conversations and so when they approach you, you from your perspective, right? From the perspective where you sit with the glasses that you wear,
Mhm.
you're like, oh man, they so nice. That's just so wonderful. But they're real slick. They're real slick and smooth with how they do things. So I'll give you an example since you asked me.
Okay.
I'll give you an example. I'll give you an answer. Oh man, you looking real nice today, sir. You look
Okay.
real. Oh, look at you. Got a glistening in your eye.
Oh, wow.
But they're real smooth with it. And this is what we're talking about right now for our listening and viewing audience. This is it was an offline conversation that I tried to drag into the show tonight, but Dr. Howe was, he was trying to pull my reins back. He didn't want me to go, but I figured I'd throw just a little piece of they're real smooth with theirs, and people you can
I'm not trying
sort
to
that
get
out.
shot while I'm driving down the road, man.
You can you can unpackage that box how you will. So listen. We're excited once again to be with you. We're excited for another opportunity to share not relationship tips. That's not what this show is about. Really, it's really about, can you relate to anything that we're talking about? And this show is pretty much, it's a dialogue. I kind of throw questions out to Dr. Howe, who, for all intents and purposes, a renowned author. He is a relationship coach, and he is an all-around business-minded CEO of MEI, Making Education Intentional, which is one of our sponsors. And so we're always excited. He's not just a guest on the show. He is part of the show. So don't get confused where what they say now, when you see him, you see me. When you see him, you see me, because we come into this thing as a package here.
Yeah.
But Dr. Howe has been on many different programs as a guest. I believe he has been a guest on a Fireside Chat. I believe that's the name of that
Yes.
particular program. But he's been on other programs talking about relationships and how to bring couples closer together, how to mend relationships, how to mend marriages, how to do all of those things. But above all those things that that Dr. Howe does, but he also writes. He's an author. You can find many of his books, or probably all of them, in some form or fashion on Amazon and some of the other outlets that are available. Dr. Howe also does this TikTok challenge, the Why Not Challenge. Check him out on TikTok. But I did notice, Dr. Howe, don't think I'm not watching you. I did notice that you also are now doing like relationship tips too.
Yes.
I think I saw one recently, maybe earliest this morning, something to do with relationship conflicts, I think, or something. Relationship war. Yes. I saw that. That this morning.
Love is war.
Love is war. So I did check that out. But yeah, check him out on TikTok. Also, he also co-hosts another program that we do, and I'm throwing all this in now because I know it's been a few weeks since we've been on this show, so I figure I get it all out now. But he also does he co-hosts another show called Awkward Situations, and we are just getting back in the studio on that one, so you can check out Awkward Situations on where we at? We're on
Anchor, Spotify,
Amazon, Google Podcasts, so yeah, so check us out there as well. So let's go ahead, Dr. Howe, let's get into the program tonight. I think we got some doozies.
Oh wow.
Some doozies of questions that I want to bring to you for you to kind of expound on and give more explanation than I could do. That's where my disclaimer comes in. That I am no professional as it relates to this. I don't have a doctorate in this area, but what I do have is I have some great what I got some I can give you some great answers based on my own knowledge, and where I fall short, I turn it over to Dr. Howe and let him take all the heat. Yeah, I give him he can take all the smoke for these questions tonight. So let's go ahead and set the foundation for what we are going to get into. Dr. Howe, a lot of relationships go through up and downs, and sometimes individuals they either deflect or they try to blame others or blame other situations for why their relationships are going up and down, and then sometimes things that you go through in your relationships as you get older come out of your upbringing when you were growing up as a child. So the first question I want to throw out to you, just so we can kind of set a foundation of where we want to go tonight. We know that we end up sometimes in different directions, but at least we have some type of foundation, and our foundation tonight is going to be kind of surrounded as we build up around those past experiences and how you how it's related to your relationships as you get older. So let's look at the first question. The first question is, how do past experience and childhood upbringing influence our romantic relationships?
Wow, that's a deep one. That's a fully loaded question. Let me go ahead and start with this. I'm going to give you 3 laws that come to mind. As you were giving your preamble, I started to jot down a few things. There's a law called the law of accountability. In every situation that arises, you're either actively or passively involved in the process. So that's the first thing I want to say. You're either a driver or a passenger in the vehicle. And so no one is 100% innocent and no one is 100% guilty. There's always 2 sides to every situation. So the second thing I want to talk about is the law of beliefs. If you believe you can, you will. If you believe you won't, you won't. And so in every relationship, your belief or your mindset determines how it's going to come out. And number 3, the law of expectations. What you expect out of your relationship is what you're going to focus on, and what you focus on is what you get. You become whatever you focus on. So with that being said, your upbringing does dramatically affect how you react from day to day. But research is now starting to show that your environment is equally as important. And so, as much as your DNA and as much as your genes might play a role in how, in your happiness and in your relationships, what type of person you want to choose, your environment, your day-to-day living is going to influence how you live your life from day to day, because it influences your thoughts. So for example, if you are an introvert, you don't like going out a lot, but around you is a very vibrant community where you don't feel comfortable, you might find yourself attaching to someone who can manage that situation for you. And that's why they say opposites attract. And when we say opposites attract, people think, oh yeah, everything has to be opposites. No, your values and beliefs have to be similar, but your personalities can be different. And so with your past experiences, what we start to find out is this: you might be quiet and introverted, and you might be more inclined towards finding someone quiet. But your environment might cause you to be so scared that you find someone that is the opposite of your regular type of personality. And so you have to choose your environments very carefully, because you might end up picking someone that was supposed to be short term, but you picked them for long term. So it was supposed to be a transitory relationship, but it ended up being a long-term relationship. That person was supposed to be a friend, but they ended up being your partner, because you picked based on short-term needs and not on long-term needs. Wow. The next thing that I want to talk about is the fact that if you grew up in an environment where there was a lot of blaming, whether it's mother, father, or whatever, you might pick up some of those traits, and you might go into a relationship with baggage. Does not mean the baggage cannot be dropped, but it means that you come into the relationship with a deficit that you must focus on to make sure that you get better. You can't just say to people, take me as I am. This is me, take me or leave me. Because most times people gonna want to leave you because you're saying, I'm not willing to change. And that's never a good situation when you're saying that this is who I am and this is who I will be till the day I die. That means you have no intentions of bettering yourself and providing value to me. You expect me to do all the work. So the most important part of a relationship is the person that you choose. And a lot of times our backgrounds go into who we choose unless we better ourselves. And what we find is people tend to choose the same type of person over and over and over again. And you end up running from relationship to relationship, but you keep getting the same person just in a different package. So if you are attracted to abusive people, you will continue to get abusive people until you change your mindset, because you attract who you are on the inside. And if on the inside is chaos, you will continue attracting chaotic people until you change the way you process and think about life. I hope I answered most of what you were interested in. But yes, the environment does affect it very much.
No, you definitely did. But I wanted you touched on something that has become like a staple in a lot of relationships, and those words were, take me as I am. You get, I am who I am. Take it or leave it. This is who I am. I'm not going to change. So those are some of those words that people use, and now that you kind of described that the importance of that environment and how that environment has kind of shaped you, it now makes sense why people say those words, right?
Mhm.
That, I am who I am. I'm not going to change. It doesn't matter.
That's a red flag.
Right. And you either like me or you don't. But a lot of what they're saying is based on that environment versus what's to come or that change. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and as much as we say, because then there's the flip side of that is, that whole thing about, they say, females especially, when they find somebody, they're looking at what can I change in this person. You know what I mean? Like, oh, I like him, but I don't like all these other things. And then he says, you take me or leave me, leave me here, whatever. So they're looking to change the person. But then on the flip side is my environment has impacted the way that I am. So you may be trying to change me, but I'm going to let you know right now, based on my environment, I'm not going to change.
Yeah.
So it's like it's a struggle, right? It's that struggle in the relationships, I guess, right?
Yeah. Now let me just talk about this, because I was talking about this yesterday to one of my clients. There's a circle called the circle of control. Mm-hmm. And in that circle of control, it talks about what you do control. And what they found is all you control is your thinking and your actions. That's it. You have very limited control in your life. You control what's inside of your body, your thoughts, your mind, your actions. That's it. Now, you do have a circle of influence where I can influence you to change some of your behaviors or to change your thought processes. So anyone in a relationship who thinks they're going to change the other person, you are in some level of denial because you have no control over anyone else. Think about a baby. Think about a kid going through their terrible twos. If that kid says, I'm going to embarrass you in public, you're getting embarrassed in public.
Right.
Because you don't even have control of a 2-year-old kid. You cannot tell a baby to stop crying in the middle of the night. The baby's going to do what the baby's going to do.
Absolutely.
So if you can't control a baby, how are you going to control a grown person? But we often go into relationships thinking we're going to change someone, and that's not our responsibility. We can provide an environment that influences them to change some of their thinking. But you can beat someone half to death and they still don't do what you want to do. And when you look at those abusive relationships, the abuse gets worse and worse and worse as the person gets more and more defiant. And so you call yourself controlling them until they hit you with some type of frying pan. And then you realize, man, I didn't have as much control as I thought I had. And so we only control ourselves. And that's what we need to focus on. So when you talk about take me as I am, but you want to control me, I'm saying, nah, focus on you, focus on being the best you possible. And I will focus on being the best me possible. And then we meet somewhere in the middle. But if you focus in on all of my faults, who's focusing on your faults?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Which brings us, I mean, that just brings us to that next question, right? This question about self-love and self-awareness, right? So the question is, how can individuals cultivate self-love and self-awareness to enhance their relationship with others? How can individuals do that? And you started alluding to it. You're worried about all my faults. You worried about everything that I don't bring to the table, but you're leaving out the fact that you have some shortcomings, right? You have some things you need to be aware of. You need to love yourself more. You need to do all these things. So how can individuals cultivate self-love and self-awareness?
I'm glad you asked that question, because a lot of people don't even know themselves. If you don't know yourself, how can you love yourself? A lot of people lie and say, yeah, I love myself. I really, I live for me. I do this for me and that. Nah, you're lying. Because a lot of times, if you don't know yourself, how can you really truly understand the essence of you? In order to be able to love yourself, you have to understand what you bring to the table, how you bring it, your gifts, your talents, your vision, your legacy that you want to leave behind, and the goals towards that legacy. Because self-love comes from having purpose. Self-love comes from knowing you're going to make a difference. Self-love comes from knowing that you can help others.
Right.
Some of the best feelings you've ever had in the world is when you helped people and didn't get anything in return. When you get paid for stuff, you don't feel the same as when you help someone out of genuine wanting to do it. And so self-love has to do with identifying who you are at the core so that you can bring value to the people around you, whether it's in your romantic relationship, friendship relationship, professional relationship, or social relationships. You are bringing something to the table, because when you're dead and gone, you want to be remembered for something.
Right.
The worst life to have in this world is knowing that when you die, no one's going to show up because no one cared.
Yeah.
How can you live 70 years and not impact on one life? That's the wasted life. And so how can you love if you've been self-centered your whole entire life? So with that being said, once you identify what it is you like about yourself, and you identify how you're going to achieve your goals in life, and you identify what your legacy is going to be when you die, then you can identify what you have to share with someone else. And once you know what you have to share with someone else, now you can actively love yourself, because you know the importance of yourself. But you have to be aware of what you bring to the table. And there are a lot of women out there who throw their bodies away because they're not aware of how special they are. And there are a lot of men who throw their bodies away. And I mean, like, they give it away cheaply.
Right.
Because they don't know how special they are on the inside. And it's not until you figure out your value that you learn constraint, you learn boundaries, you learn to have non-negotiables, you learn to let people know where your limits are. But how can you know where my limits are if I don't even know where my limits are? And that's part of the self-awareness. And so when I first met my wife, I asked her, how, what makes you different from all these other girls out there? And she said to me, I know how to be cool, calm, and collective. I'd never heard a girl say something like that before.
That's a slick move. That was
threw me for a loop. I'm like, oh, so she didn't say, oh, I got this body and I can do this and that and the other. Nah, she was like, I know how to be cool, calm, and collective. She came with some intellectual stuff. And I was like, oh, okay, I can vibe with that, And so I wanted to know more about that, because I did not know how to be cool, calm, and collective. And I knew I needed something like that in my life. So she knew what she brought to the table, and she was able to verbalize it. And I was able to say, ooh, I want some of that. And then we decided, okay, well, what do I need to do to get that cool, calm, and collective tutoring or mentorship or whatever? What can I give you in return for this? Because relationships start off selfish.
Right.
What can I get from you with a minimum effort, and what can you get from me with a minimum effort? And then it gets to, okay, I like you, so I'm willing to provide service and value to you, but you always got to get something back in return. But we're trying to get relationships to where they're selfless. So they go from selfish to selfless. When relationships get selfless, I'm willing to pour into you with not expecting anything in return. And very few people get to that point, because we're always trying to get some, oh, you know what? I want to go out with the fellas later this week, so I'm going to put a lot of time in with the wife early this week, so I can get this later. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
Ooh, Valentine's Day coming up, so I gotta be real nice the whole month of February to make sure that Valentine's Day goes well. That's all selfish stuff. But are you doing it because you know what your strengths are and you're pouring your strengths into that person to help them become a better person or to influence them to become a better person? Not to, you provide help that they need, which is value, so that they can achieve their goals and so that they can get what they want out of life. And like I said, the goal is to get to selflessness where I'm doing it out the kindness of my heart, whether you do it back to me or not.
Right.
But if you pick the right person, they will be wanting to do it right back to me because I'm making them happy. I'm giving value to them. And they're also trying to be selfless and they're also trying to be better versions of themselves. So it works out perfectly. But if I'm sitting back waiting for you to pour into me and you're sitting back waiting for me to pour into you, nothing gets done because we're both being selfish about starting. Nobody wants to be made a fool of, so nobody's willing to put the first foot forward.
Right.
Foot the world.
Listen, I know if you. I was waiting. I thought you had. I was vibing. But let me say, you said something. You said something very important. Choosing right. Well, you said two things, and this was a funny one for me. Two things. You said your wife said she knows how to be calm,
cool, calm, and collective.
Cool, calm. And I don't know if you heard me because you were trying to be the serious moment. But I said she pulled a smooth move for you. That was one of them old moves.
I was fresh off the boat, so I wasn't used to that kind of stuff, man.
You were fresh off the boat. But yeah, so that knowing if that is the right person, right? So there's some investment involved in that. And you said something else earlier too, where you said, I need some of that. Right. Mm-hmm. So you had a self-awareness of what you were missing.
Yes.
And so in knowing what you're missing, and then you find someone that has that piece, almost like a puzzle, that one piece that you were missing. And then in that self-awareness, you kind of said, you know what? I need, in so many words, I need to be trained on how, watch this, how to accept that piece so that I don't fumble it, if you will, right?
Yeah, right, right.
And it's just like football, right? No matter how good you are at that sport or any sport, there's still a sense, because they always use the word fundamentals, right? The fundamental things. I mean, everybody can get out there and catch a football. Everybody can get out there and shoot a basketball. Everybody can hit a baseball, right? But there's those fundamental pieces that win games.
Yeah.
The fundamental pieces, the little stuff that we sometimes forget, on how to position ourselves and what to, different things. And so in those relationships, there's also those fundamental things that we miss that includes that self-awareness. And so as we talk about that investment in finding that right person, one of the things that a lot of people, especially in this day and age, I mean, even in the, years ago too, part of that investment is that courting period, right? That courting period. And sometimes that courting period, it kind of flows into the marriage as well. And we're talking about, in this question, we're talking about that long distance relationship, right? That long distance. Now, I'm not, and every relationship is different, right? But it's hard to be in a long distance courting relationship, then get married and still be in that long distance relationship. It can happen. We've seen them happen, but it presents some challenges, right?
Definitely.
And so maybe in this question, you can help those who are in that type of relationship, and then also those who are in the courting period that are in those type of relationships too. So this question that I want to pose to you is, how can individuals navigate the challenges of long distance relationships or relationships with differing levels of commitment? Now watch this. This is the crazy part about this question. So I don't want you to be confused. Now, you got the long distance relationship, but then you have the relationships that, in a sense, are in a long distance level of commitment, right? So I love you, but you don't love me. I like the way you do this, but you hate the way I do that. Or I want to invest my money, you want to spend the money. So how, and I know this is one of those things you're going to have to kind of unpackage, but hopefully you can kind of see the direction that this portion is going. But
you snaking around.
So how can we navigate the challenges in those type of relationships?
And by the way, for the people who are listening to this, he's not giving these questions ahead of time. So if you see me looking down, I'm writing this stuff down so I can keep up with this stuff, because he be throwing A, B, C, D, E, and F for me to cover. So I got to make sure that I cover that. All right. So it's kind of interesting. I was speaking to my dad earlier today, and a story came up. When my grandfather was alive and younger, before he retired, he worked on a plantation as an accountant. And I'm talking back in Barbados. And he would work during the week and come home on weekends. And he worked like that all of his career. And my mother used to tell me stories, and my dad kind of echoed it today, of how it was a long distance relationship, because back when he started, he had to travel a distance of about 7 or 8 miles on horseback to get to and from work. So he only came home on the weekends. And my grandmother, when my mother was young and her siblings were young, she kept a book of all of the things that the kids did. And when he came home, he had to discipline the kids. Now, so that was a long distance relationship. So they had to work things out. My grandmother, being organized, kept a journal of everything that was happening. Now, on the flip side, my dad was telling me the story of when he retired. He came home and he started to get on my grandmother's nerves, because she was used to having the house to herself. And now this man is home, not just on the weekend, but during the weekdays. And so now she did not have full autonomy over the house anymore, because he was there trying to run stuff like he did only on the weekends. And so that is what a lot of people run into. A long distance relationship is easy to navigate if you choose the right person. That's the first C. And then the second C is if you both commit to the relationship, to each other, and to yourself. Now, let me break those 3 commitments down. You have to commit to yourself, because a relationship is something that you have to say, I am mentally making sure that I am deliberate about staying within this relationship. So that's the first level of commitment. The second commitment says, I am committed to this other person and their well-being and their dreams, aspirations, and purpose in this world. Right? And then the third commitment is, I'm committed to this relationship, what we're trying to build together. Now, why is that important? That is important because psychologists and researchers have found that the most we can like in someone is about 70 to 75%, which means there's 25 to 30% that will drive you nuts. And so if you're trying to find someone that you're 100% happy with, you'll never find it. So long distance relationships, when people come together, you're always on your best behavior, because you're trying to get what you can out of that other person while you have that time, because time is fleeting, time is short. So you want to make sure that when you go back, you have good experiences in your mind to help you sustain till you see them again. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir. Okay.
Now, what makes a long distance relationship difficult is if one person is overly committed and the other one isn't. if one is running the field and one is staying committed, that is one of the things that makes a relationship difficult. Because when when the other person gets a hold of that scenario, there's a level of hurt, betrayal, and pain involved in it. And so now that 25 to 30% becomes amplified because now you've thrown pain into it. So it flips. So now I'm looking at all your faults. And because what you focus on is what you become, and because what you focus on is what you think about, now that 30% feels like 70 to 75%. And that's what amplifies a lot of problems. So what we find is, and what research has shown us, that when people have affairs, they have affairs with people who are good in that part that we're missing. So they're good in that 25 to 30%. And that makes our lives feel full because we never got that 25 to 30%. Wow. Well, what makes us happy is you have the 70% and now you get this 30%. Now you feel like, oh, this person is making me feel complete. Nah, you just got to 100% because of two people. But if the relationship breaks off and you're stuck with this person, then you start to realize, oh man, they're only giving me 25 to 30%. I thought this person was the one, but they're not as good as the person I left because they only provided a fraction of what you had originally. And so if you can handle choosing the right person in a long distance relationship, that's 1/3 of the problem gone. If both of y'all can commit to the struggle of being separated, that is another 1/3. And then if y'all are willing to grow and add service to each other or provide value to each other, that is, those three things right there creates a whole piece of the puzzle that you will be able to navigate through, because commitment will help you fight. Commitment will help you find ways around. Commitment will help you find the strength to get up and go through what you don't want to go through, whatever compromises you need to make, because you value what you're getting. Just like when I said, my wife told me how to be cool, calm, and collective. I knew I needed that. And I remember one day she was fussing me out because I had done something really stupid. And she was sitting down and she was calmly cussing me out. And in my mind, I had never had a girl to do that to me. And in my head, I was saying, she got some nerve. I'm going to get up and leave. Get up. Get up. And something would not let me get up because I knew if I got up, what I was going to be losing. So ego wanted me to get up and just storm off and be a child about it. And I was only, 19 years old? No, actually I was 20. But the matureness in me knew what I wanted. My self-awareness knew what I needed. So I sat there and I took it. But my brain kept saying, get up, don't let her talk to you like that. But my commitment to that process made me stay and take it. And so that to me identifies what commitment brings to a relationship. When you want to go and you don't go, it's because commitment is at a level that makes you deny your ego and deny those things that make you want to have one up or the upper hand, or don't want somebody to talk to you and make you feel, even though they're telling you the truth, your ego makes you want to lash out. Because that truth hurts a little bit, and it stings, and you just want to walk away from it. But the maturity makes you commit, stay there, and take the agony. Wow. Because it's worth it.
Wow. Listen, Ooh, I think we've had a time tonight. There's this sense in the room of it looks like our foundation kind of made its way around the self-awareness and the self-love. And if you have those two, you can navigate the long-distance relationships. You can navigate your upbringing from your childhood, and in doing that, you'll be able to have a wholesome relationship, not only with yourself, but to the ones that you love, the ones you care about, the ones you call friends, the ones you call your spouse, the ones you call your girlfriend, your boyfriend, or whatever it may be. And that self-love, that self-awareness can go a long, long way. The question I have tonight, Dr. Howell, that I ask every single night before we close out of our show, can our audience relate to this? Mercy. Say, listen, Dr. Howell, it has been real. We are out of time. I've enjoyed this program tonight. I've enjoyed you as always. We look forward to our next episode. Dr. Howell, I want you to, he told us, audience, that he doesn't get these questions beforehand. And so I'm going to leave a cliffhanger question that I want you to answer next week on our show. And that question, this is the cliffhanger question. This is the cliffhanger questions. How can individuals identify and work through communication barriers in their relationships? Listen, we look forward to seeing you all next time. This has been another episode of Relate to This. We'll see you later.
Relate to this. With J. Charles and Dr. Howell. Relate to this.